maybe it's a personal thing with me, but the unilateral embargo, where the press release arrives in the mail and says embargoed until, 2 days from now, that's bullshit. No one's going to pay any attention to that.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's stupid.
It has to be a two-way agreement.
You gotta get the reporters buy-in beforehand. It's just like saying, blah blah blah. Oh, by the way, that's off the record. That doesn't work either. Right? Except with the most naive, 21-year-old CEOs of startup companies. Those are the only people that I will allow that. Once you hit 22,
You're on the record.
I'll honor them, but so long as, I mean, the tacit agreement obviously is that if somebody else breaks it, then I'm running it. If you say I've got to wait till 8 a.m., I'll agree to that. I'm absolutely fine with that. If it's something I want to write about, I'm good with that. But yeah, if then somebody else has it out at 6 and my story's ready, then I'm publishing it at 6. But yeah, in general, I don't mind them. I mean, look, it's your story. You came to me. I didn't come to you. It's very different from if I learn that you're going to be releasing something tomorrow at 8 independently, and you say, well, can you hold it till 8? No, probably not.
I don't do embargoes at all. I just don't. I just don't do it. I won't agree to it. If you tell me that there's an embargo on for something, and will I take it in order to look at the information? It's the same thing as an off the record agreement where you say, I'll tell you about this, but we need to talk off the record, and I'll say okay, right? I'll say okay to those all the time. That's something that I do all the time.
So you won't take. So if I have a press release.
Yeah,
so if I'm
going
to
to
have a press release,
I've got a press release tomorrow about a big deal involving such and such a company, I'm not interested.
So if you're not interested, though, but from your perspective, what if it's something you're going to end up having to write about?
I'll just write it.
So you'll be.
I'll just write it for the press release like everyone else, or better yet, someone else at my organization will write about it from the press release. You know what I mean? I'm just not interested in having the same news as everyone else at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd rather be zigging when everyone else is zagging. What I may do when you call me with the embargo is I may now go on LinkedIn and find out everyone I know who left the company recently and call them and try to find out what the news is. We'll do that. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it's on.
Thing does work, huh?
It's just not that valuable. I feel like there are other things I could be spending my time better on. If I'm an hour later than everyone else with the story, I don't think it matters that much to our readers. If it's a big.
You still do it an hour later, then, depending on the news.
Yeah. I mean, we'll still cover it if it's news that has to be covered. I mean, the other thing is that 80% of these embargoed things are stuff. I mean, how many? What percent do you think you act on? Like, you agree to the embargo, you get the story, and then you're like.
Well, I mean, for my email in the news section, I mean, I end up putting most. But that, I guess that's the issue. Is I'd rather get the embargo press release because on the chance that it's something. So today was a good example. There was a company called 7 Degrees which raised some money today, and so I published it at the exact same moment. TechCrunch did, VentureBeat, maybe you guys did, et cetera. And I had a Q&A with the CEO yesterday. But I actually found it to be a fairly interesting company, and I found the Q&A and the conversation to be fairly interesting. There was probably 2 or 3 others yesterday I didn't decide to write on, but for that one. Well, I might as well agree to it because I'm interested in writing it. I feel I'm going to write it anyway. I might as well write it on the day when I know I can get the CEO's attention. And if I'm going to write it, I might as well get it up at the same time as everyone else rather than know I'm going to write it and be an hour late. Fortune's a little different. It's not a news organization, but still.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I run the risk that it's something really big and that it's something I would have wished that I had that Q&A.
Don't do embargoes. Don't do exclusives. I gave the same advice 20 years ago. Yeah. Don't do them.
So would you say we just gave an exclusive to the New York Times just recently because we wanted the guaranteed coverage, and not only that, I happen to have an old school CEO. I wish he was here right now to hear this because it wasn't.
What was the story, if you don't mind asking?
Like, it was a very
oh, it's not out yet?
No, it is.
Okay.
We were going to be issued a very important patent. We were the first to have achieved a certain breakthrough in our field, and we were about to be granted a patent. Yeah. And to him, the reporter initially said he would do a blog, and my CEO had told me, anything less than a story in the paper.
Yeah, you want to hit that 57-year-old demographic.
Business page with a photo.
I wanted it for the scrapbook.
And I tried to explain to him, think about the eyeballs, the story living online, the clicks, the retweets, and people.
But it's going to do both, right? Because once you're in the paper, you're also online.
Paper, that's right. Once you're in the paper, you're also online.
But this is what I want to know, is how do you convert the old school thinking? I would have loved to have given that news, maybe brief a dozen people, or not have to promise ourselves to one publication, but we did. We got one story. Others covered it, but I don't know how to convert that old way of thinking.
but should you convert it? How did it work out? I mean,
It worked out, we got the story. He
Did
was
people pick it up?
pleased and-
Did people
Did
pick it
people
up?
pick it up after that?
Absolutely.
People follow the
Then it
times on
worked.
it?
Then it absolutely worked to me. I mean, look, the newspaper online thing I think might be a bit of a red herring because we're saying, I mean, if it appears in the paper, it's going to appear online also. You know, you get in the journal, you're on WSJ.com. You get in the Times, you're on NewYorkTimes.com.
Right.
So that's automatically happening for you. If people pick it, the whole point is, will other people pick it up then? Because they're probably picking it up offline. If they do, I disagree. I think it still works.
Yeah,
I think
your,
the exclusives
your
can
press
work.
people have to have the savvy to know who's going to follow it,
I
right?
think it's a
Like there are
huge
stories
gamble.
that if Greg gets, if Dan gets, I won't follow, right? Because it's just not worth it. But then there are stories that are like, yeah, you know, you got to jump on because it's big, right? So if it's a story that's big enough, I mean, what's different for every story, right? So some publications will follow others want. You know, you need to kind of know the landscape well enough to be able to say, okay, I know these guys will follow the Times, but maybe the Post won't, and maybe the Daily News won't.
You also have the option, in theory, of holding one or two interesting little factoids back from the New York Times and saying to reporter X, who might be at a trade, say, look, my CEO really wanted to be in the New York Times. You know, anyone who's at a trade publication knows he ain't the New York Times. So say, and I whatever, don't maybe apologize, but say, so the Times has it. If you're willing to publish it right after the Times comes out at whatever, 2 a.m., I can give you some additional information the Times doesn't have. And then that might do your job of getting that person to also cover it. There's always additional information. Times has 500 words to spend.
The timely heads up is huge. I don't begrudge anybody trying to get in TechCrunch or whatever, but I'd do the same if I was in their shoes. But the timely heads up, an hour before it hits, hey, just keep your eye on TechCrunch for the next hour. That is huge. Believe me, I don't resent it. I'm very happy to be the first to see it on TechCrunch if it's that big, and to be the first to have the link to the press release and do it.
And the coup, by the way, as a reporter, is to say TechCrunch is going to report in 30 minutes. If you can do that, then that's fantastic. It's happened, not to me, but it's happened. If you can pull that off.
Are there any other questions?
To answer your question, I think the thing to do is case study evidence, and I think there's abundant evidence now that that word of mouth and sort of so-called viral marketing works very well. And I would look to sites like Word of Mouth Marketing Association, like Social Media Today, like Media Post. These are organizations that are always carrying stories about how these campaigns driven from the bottom up really work.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? Can you guys give any examples of like really early stage startups that have used social media well to capture your attention, to get you to write a story? Like recently, like
There's a
using
company
Twitter or
called
something like that.
Bacon Salt in Seattle, and they make a condiment that makes everything taste like bacon. They have nothing to do with tech. They're two guys who went on America's Funniest Home Videos and got $5,000 and quit their jobs at Jobster or whatever, and decided when they were in a bar in Miami Beach at 2 a.m. that they're going to create the next great condiment. It's like a vegetarian, sure, 0-calorie thing. And now these two guys are just talk about a great story that just tells itself. I mean, they show up at football games dressed up in foam bacon suits, and but anyway, they
You
went
have to have
on.
the right CEO for that.
That's right. That's true.
They
So the other questioner there, I'm
That would work.
not sure that's going to work.
Because his product isn't as cool. I don't know what it does, but it does not make everything taste like bacon.
But so if people are talking about it,
They got some huge Facebook groups and Twitter, and it just became viral. And
yeah, it's the virality of it. I mean, if people are talking about it, it catches your attention. I think that's it. And some things, got it, and some things don't.
Here in Boston, I mean,
Nick Denton knows a lot about that.
I mean, it wasn't social media per se, but I think when Scavenger did its first treasure hunt here in Boston for VCs and entrepreneurs and stuff, well, I got invited to, and I wasn't the only one. You might have been there too. There comes a point also as a reporter where you're like, shit, I spent 5 hours doing this. I better write about it, right? I mean, they're going to wonder where I was all day. So I mean, that worked out really well.
Okay, I think we have one last question.
Okay, speaking of spending 5 hours, so if we spend 5 hours trying to get your attention to write about our company, could you give us an idea of have you had an ROI for a company? And then also as a former television reporter and now a co-founder of a startup where my partner is from China, I appreciate the seminar and the ideas. And recently getting my master's, something that comes to my mind is the quality of writing of stories. I guess, so my question is two-part. guys writing about our companies, how's it impacted the ROI of companies? And the second part is quality. Are you seeing quality improving or not improving, and what medium maybe is the best?
You mean in terms of media or in terms of pitches?
Maybe in terms of, everybody thinks they're a storyteller, you can write blogs, but sometimes when you start to read them, the writing is so bad, you may not be interested to continue. So I guess how do you balance that, or what are you seeing?
I think on your first question, the ROI is most apparent to you, especially if you have a presence online. If we write something about you and link to your website, which we mostly do when we write about it online, how many hits do you get? What kind of hits are they? Did they buy? Did they stick around? Did they come back? You know, like I've heard the criticism that TechCrunch, you get the biggest wave of initial hits, but most of them are tire kickers. It's a lot of VCs and investors. They're coming to see if they might invest or look, but if they decide no, then they're on to the next thing. You know, so it's like, I think, you know, companies, it's beyond the great thing about the web is you know who read it, you know who looked. So, you know, and you know who linked from where they came from. If you're getting traffic to your website from a Mass High Tech article, from a Fortune article, or from an Economy article, then, you know, from Paul Gillen's blog post, then you know that that person is tapping into an audience that's valuable to you. So I think it's, you know, it's important for companies to be up on the analytics side to understand that return on investment. As far as the quality of the writing, I think it's atrocious. I think it's deplorable.
Disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's
There
really
have been
awful.
50,000 journalists laid off in the last 3 years
You'd think-
in the United States, and a lot of these people are finding work now as corporate bloggers. JetBlue, eBay, a company called Cree Lighting down in North Carolina that I'm familiar with, HubSpot over in Cambridge. They've all hired former journalists, former newspaper journalists, as full-time bloggers, and they can get them fairly cheap right now, and they're good.
When you ask about quality, of course, there's also various controls which don't really exist for the most part anymore, at least in a lot of the online world. I mean, so I'm writing for Fortune. If I was to write a magazine piece for Fortune, you better believe it would have about 10 editors read it and copy editors, and the thing would be dissected and ripped apart, et cetera, before it prints in the magazine. I can put something on the front of their homepage that no one's seen before I put it up there. Nobody's seen. And so it's just a very different thing. I think that the thing that made a lot of journalists look good, that it just doesn't exist anymore. So you really
copy
see
editor.
the copy.
Yeah,
There's no
right.
forget copy editor. There's in many cases no editor. I mean, when I was running when I was running PE Hub, I had reporters working for me, but we had basically what we called a post editing system, which was post when you can. When I have a chance to read it, I will read it, and if I see something wrong, I'll fix it. But you know what? I had someone on the West Coast. If she was posting at 11 p.m. her time, I didn't see that until the next morning. So I mean that's just the kind of the reality I think of the blog world for the most part. Magazines are different. Certain websites are different. You guys might actually have an editing process. But again, we're a big Time Warner thing. We don't have it. We just don't.
The quality of the writing is about the same as it's ever been, but you just see way more things now that you used to not see. So maybe I think quality is a big concern. Quality of writing is something that I worry about. The future of journalism and what we do in storytelling. And the amount of time that I used to be able to spend on a story, like Dan says, for a monthly magazine, you know, you hash it out, go back and forth for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe more. And I mean, there's a reason why New Yorker and Atlantic and Harper's, and there's a reason why that is, I don't know, it's better writing, right? I mean, it's more time.
Even
More
now,
time is better.
you can catch typos. I'm telling you.